And did you make the webinar live?
It should be.
All right. We're just giving it another minute for folks to come on in then. And I do like to start things on time. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Becky Steckler, and I'm a project director at Echo Northwest. Echo Northwest is a consulting firm, and we work across the Western United States and try to measure things that people care about related to the economy and growth management and social and environmental policies. And so I am thrilled today as part of the incorporation study that we are conducting for the Arch Cape Falcon Cove Beach Community Club and residents locally to present this particular webinar on what it takes to adopt a comprehensive plan. And so we have a number of specialists from around the state that can talk about Oregon's land use planning program, which is unique in the country. And I'm thrilled to be joined today by three folks that are from the Department of Land Conservation and Development, the state agency that manages Oregon's land use planning program. And first we'll have Brett Estes, who's the North Coast Regional Representative. And he works in Lincoln, Tillamook, Clatsop, and Columbia counties. Brett has over 30 years of experience in local land use implementation and municipal government management. Before coming to DLCD, he served as the planning director and later the city manager for the city of Astoria. And he's been in his current position as a regional rep for 3 years. Kevin Young is a senior urban planner at DLCD, and he joined as a housing planner in 2018, but they now have about 15 staff that are focused on housing. So he has a lot of experience to bring, and he's been a planner with a number of different Oregon cities and a county over the last 20 years. And then finally, John Jennings is a community services specialist in rural areas. It definitely has a specialty in rural areas across the state. He joined the department in 1997, and I haven't done the math, John, to say how many years that is, but I know it's quite a few. And he's also worked for local government. And then finally, we're joined by John Morgan, who is a private consultant, and he's probably worked for over 35 communities in Oregon alone, as well as many others across the country over the last 50 years. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and encourage folks to get right into it. I'm going to hand it over to Brett at DLCD. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for having us today. Becky, are you able to see the slide, the first slide?
You know what, Brett? Actually, we're seeing the presenter's view. So you might have to just show just the slides show only.
Just one sec. My apologies.
There, that looks perfect. Thanks.
There. Okay. Thank you. So, thank you for having us today, and I'm just going to launch right in to give a little bit of history of the land use planning system in the state of Oregon. And first of all, the Department of Land Conservation and Development, which is the agency for which urban planning or planning issues are coordinated in the state, is DLCD, was created in 1973 along with the Land Conservation and Development Commission, or which is the board of individuals who provide the rulemaking processes and under which we work. And we just celebrated our 50-year anniversary, and Really, all of the Oregon land use system that Becky was talking about earlier is based upon this passage of Senate Bill 100. Looking through the slides, I'll kind of highlight there's a whole set of goals, land use planning goals, which apply to jurisdictions across the state. And there were first 14 were established by 1975, and then by 1976, the coastal goals were established, which would apply to the areas that we're talking about here today. Subsequent to that, the Land Conservation and Development Commission acknowledged all the city and county comprehensive plans in the state from 1976 to 1986. And should Arch Cape and the surrounding area become incorporated, there would be an acknowledged comprehensive plan for this city. And I'll get into that a little bit more here in a bit. I also want to note that in 1977, there's the creation of the Oregon Coastal Management Program, which is through the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, to be able to have some coordination between local jurisdictions and state and federal agencies. And whenever there's federal provisions that come into play, there's this coordination through the Coastal Division at DLCD, which I'm a part of. So here are statewide planning goals, which would be applicable to the communities that we're looking at and talking about today. There is one goal not listed here that deals with the Willamette Greenway, but you have all this breadth of issues which are addressed in the statewide planning goals, from everything dealing with economic development, housing, the coastal shorelands, beaches, citizen involvement, very important for goal 1, dealing with issues of recreational needs. And a jurisdiction's comprehensive plan is going to mirror the statewide planning goals that are applicable to their communities. And so you would have a section which would correspond to the goals and rules which have been adopted by the Land Conservation Development Commission or the legislature. So this is kind of maybe a bit of a cryptic graphic, but I kind of want to show this to kind of explain how local decisions, land use decisions, are made for any county or city in the state of Oregon. You have at the top the statewide planning goals, which I mentioned earlier, created and adopted by the Land Conservation Development Commission. And then you have Oregon revised statutes, which could come out of legislation from the legislature. Falling under that, there are Oregon administrative rules. There may be specific rulemaking processes that are undertaken to further define a statewide planning goal or an Oregon revised statute to be able to apply at the local level. Then you get down to the municipal level. If you're talking about incorporating, there would be a comprehensive plan adopted by the city council for the city, which would include and respond to all the Oregon revised statutes, statewide planning goals, and Oregon administrative rules. And then following that, there would be your local ordinances, land use ordinances, zoning ordinances, subdivision ordinances, are two kind of the typical type of local ordinances that a local city would need to adopt to be able to make land use decisions at the local level. There would be a planning commission created for the city, and then planning commission is able to make some decisions. Sometimes they make recommendations up to a city council if you're changing policy or law. So I want to talk a little bit about what are the state responsibilities with regards to land use when you're working under the Oregon land use system. So with the state, The Department of Land Conservation Development is the agency which is governed by, as I was talking about before, the Land Conservation and Development Commission, or LCDC. We would set the land use policy, or the Land Conservation Development Commission in the legislature would set the policy, meaning the goals and the rules which a local jurisdiction would need to address and comply. The Department of Land Conservation Development acknowledges that initial city comprehensive plan and zoning ordinances, so saying if you became incorporated, and if there are any changes, then there is an acknowledgement process, and I'll get to that here in a little bit. The department enforces the goals. It's really looking at if there are any changes to your comprehensive plan, to your zoning ordinance, that you are working within the rules and the goals established, and to ensure that there's compliance back between the city and the state. We would review any plan amendments, the comprehensive plan amendments, as I was mentioning before. There used to be a periodic review process, and that was a place where I'm going to call it an audit, where there would be a time where they would be reviewed to ensure that there is continued compliance with the statewide plans and goals and rules. That's no longer required, but it is something that jurisdictions can voluntarily choose to do at this point in time. We provide technical assistance to the cities through the North Coast Regional Representative, in this case, myself. There are 9 regional representatives across the state. I tackle the north part of the Oregon coast. We do have grant dollars that we provide opportunity to apply. Right now, there's quite a bit of focus with regards to housing, and that really is kind of the largest pot of funds that we have going out after the adoption of the new budget, which just started in the beginning of July. But there are also technical assistance dollars and other opportunities that come up. Then there's technical support. There's a whole list of specialists at the Department of Land Conservation and Development. If your jurisdiction has a sticky issue you're working on, that you're able to reach out and be able to provide some guidance and some thoughts when you're doing your work. It's not that we're processing any applications for you, but we're able to provide support. So now we're looking at what are the responsibilities of cities and counties, in this case, if you incorporated the city. So a city, as I was mentioning before, would be adopting all the comprehensive plan sections to implement the statewide planning rules and your codes in compliance with those goals. Now, your local vision and your needs, what is the feel of the area, is included in that document. So there's some structure to what needs to be adopted, but there is the ability to be able to address what is of importance to the community. You make your land use decisions, meaning you process the permits that come forward with any development applications. You enforce your own codes and your own ordinances, and then you provide assistance. Your staff would provide assistance to the public with regards into any applications. So I want to highlight Goal 2 and what Goal 2 does. So Goal 2 requires local governments to have comprehensive land use plans and those implementing zoning ordinances, like zoning ordinances, subdivision ordinances, that comply with the applicable statewide planning goals. So your comprehensive plan establishes the vision for community. What is the whole vision for the community over a planning horizon? Maybe it's 25 years. What are you looking to achieve? It is your guiding land use document for the local government or the city. The comprehensive plan has documents that guide land use infrastructure development the conservation of natural resources, economic development, all those statewide planning goals that I had listed before. It includes information and detail about how you wish to be able to address that vision looking over your planning horizon. So your zoning and development codes have the specific regulations, that's where the rubber hits the road, designed to implement your comprehensive plan. So your zoning ordinance has things like where different land uses are permitted, the density of any development, the height of any buildings, setbacks. Now, again, there are some provisions that are going to be required by the state with regards to some of that, but then there's flexibility that can be built into your zoning ordinances above and beyond the minimum thresholds that statewide rules or goals may have. So the zoning ordinance also sets forth the approval criteria or standards that would need to be met when reviewing any application. And then it includes the standards for things like land divisions, your permitting procedures. So I talked about acknowledgement of your comprehensive plan and your zoning ordinances. And with goal 2, are you stuck with what you have after you adopt it? No, you're not. Then if the city wanted to amend their zoning ordinance or their comprehensive plan, they would do what is called a post-acknowledgement plan amendment. We call it a PAPA. And there's a whole process by which the city would notify the Department of Land Conservation and Development before the first Planning Commission hearing to be able to give a DLCD the ability to review and comment and weigh in on the change. DLCD doesn't have the unilateral ability to stop something which is going through a city's amendment process, but the department is able to participate in the land use process through the Planning Commission and City Council hearings. And then if there was the participation, if there was a concern that there was something that was not addressing statewide planning rules or goals, there would be the ability for the department to appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals, which is a land use court, if that was the case. So that's all that I have for right now. And I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to start chatting a little bit more about some of the statewide planning goals.
Thanks, Brett. Yeah, could you advance the, oh, is that it? Wait a minute. Oh, it's a little different format. Okay, got it. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, I think Brett has covered this, and good morning, folks. Kevin Young, Senior Urban Planner with DLCD, has covered kind of this idea of the comprehensive plan and implementing ordinances pretty well. I think one thing I want to add, this little bit of OAR, these numbers, that's Oregon Administrative Rules, and this is the rule that says, hey, when you're incorporating a newly incorporated city, these are the rules that would apply to a newly incorporated city. One of the key things to know is that from the date of incorporation, the city would have 4 years to develop comprehensive plan and land use regulations over that span of time. So there's quite a bit of analysis that needs to happen in that 4-year time span. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I think as Brett said, we've got the applicable statewide planning goals would need to be addressed in that comp plan. One of the key pieces with being a city in Oregon is that the Oregon system is unique in that cities all establish a UGB, which is an urban growth boundary, and that is the area that provides for the 20-year land needs. And the way that it's determined is through population projections. So the population projections are developed by the Population Research Center at Portland State University. They do this on a regular basis. So I would imagine the step would be if Arch Cape incorporates, we would then make sure that PRC provides a population estimate and a population projection for the new city. And basically it's looking at like, okay, what kind of growth do we expect? How many people are going to want to move to our community over the next 20 years? And also looking at things like employment lands. So based on those projections, cities will then complete studies to determine their housing needs, employment needs, and public land needs over that span of time. And as Brett said, we have, especially in the housing realm, we've had funding to support that in recent years. The legislature has been very generous in that regard. Of course, can't guarantee that funds would be available, but hopefully if Arch Cape incorporates, that could be, we could assist with some of those studies. The other piece I wanted to talk about a little bit is the new ONA program, because in terms of how housing planning has been done, we're in the middle of kind of a big change in the system statewide. So ONA is the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis Program. It was brought into being by a bill that passed a couple of years ago, and basically establishes a more active role for the state in supporting housing planning for primarily by cities within the state. And one of the ways it does that is to allocate housing targets for every city in the state. So the way that's done, and we have the Department of Administrative Services just completed their first methodology to show how this is done, is to identify a target number of housing units at a variety of income levels. And one of the things that the ONA program is designed to do is to take into account some things that haven't been considered in prior housing planning efforts, things like second homes or vacation rentals, which I'm sure is a phenomenon in Arch Cape. What's the impact on those things on our actual housing needs? If many of these are short-term rentals or they're not occupied all the time, how many units would we need for the future? Also looking at people experiencing homelessness and historic underproduction. And so I think it's, the numbers coming out of that program are relatively robust. I mean, it's not necessarily higher numbers than we saw from the prior population estimates. In some cases it is more. But what this means is that with that new ONA program, the new city would then need to look at what are the tools that we can use to provide housing at this range of income levels, and generally in a variety of housing types. Generally, folks at the low income end of the spectrum aren't able to afford single detached homes. So typically there's need for multifamily or other types of housing. So that would be one of the obligations of the new city. Yeah, and I think I'll leave it there, but I just want to give people kind of a full picture of like what incorporation might mean in terms of providing for current and future housing needs. I want to turn to John next. I think there was one question that he has unique experience in answering, which is John's worked with the city of La Pine, which is our most recently newly incorporated city. And I think one of the questions we have is, how does a new city set itself up for success? So I'll turn next to John Jennings.
Well, hey everybody. I don't know if you can see me or not. It's good to be here, and thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Brett. I think you did a really nice job of rolling through those items. And I did work with La Pine. I was a little bit at arm's distance. I wasn't the lead staff, but I do think here's what it takes to be successful is, right, a group, a nucleus of committed individuals, right, that are willing to get into it for the right reasons and for the long haul. We would help, as we did then. The state did invest a fairly significant amount of money to help stand up that local program. And of course, we'll have our staff, both our field staff and our technical staff, available as resources. And we want to sit at the table with you, throughout that. We're not going to wait until you guys come up with something and then send it to us. It's not like that. We want to be partners in this work. I'm just going to go real quickly while I'm spotlighted, I guess, through some takeaways that I'd like for folks to kind of take away from this conversation. And one, the need for a comprehensive plan and implementing ordinances, right? Then the comprehensive plan is that document that sort of folds in all the statutes and rules and laws, and that those two products are then acknowledged, and LCDC presides over that acknowledgement, right? Once that's done, the comprehensive plan will be your guiding, really your prevalent local land use document. But your zoning ordinance is as Brett said, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where the county or the city staff will go when they have a question. That's what the county or city planning commission will rely on to make decisions. So in many ways, it's that zoning ordinance, kind of at the end of that process that really is viewed as most important. It's not the most important, but it will be the one that's most used. And then you can make some adjustments to that, as Brett pointed out, to that post acknowledgement plan process, right? Once you've been acknowledged, well, then a change is post acknowledgement. That is not provided over by LCDC, right? We don't get, as a department or as the commission, a second bite at that apple. We are really no different than any other party. Sometimes we participate, sometimes we don't. But again, that's available. And that I would also just say that, gosh, it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint to put this together. It takes several years. It takes a lot of work. Sometimes it can be a gauntlet, but it's not insurmountable. Folks that want to do it and want to do it for the right reasons will be able to accomplish it. If the reasons are that, if a location wants to incorporate because they don't want to have any economic type development, they might find that this is a frustrating process, right? If a group or an area wants to incorporate because they don't want to have multifamily development ever, this might be a frustrating process because you will be taking on those duties and responsibilities of the city. But there is that opportunity to put your vision into things and your twist on things. We encourage you to be creative and thoughtful. And again, we'll hopefully be at the table with you all along the way. I'll stop there, but thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, John. I would love to turn it over to John Morgan now, who has worked in many communities across the state and has definitely helped those communities create comprehensive plans, to update comprehensive plans, and to work through many of these issues. So John, take it away.
Good. Thank you very much, Becky. Nice job leading up to this moment. I appreciate it very much. I have been involved, like I say, for 50 years in this, taking me back to the very beginning of our state planning program. I was the planner in charge as a consultant with long hair, believe it or not, for the original comprehensive plan development in Hermiston, Burns, Hines, Harney County, Gerhart, and Mount Angel, six jurisdictions for which we wrote the original comprehensive plans. And then subsequently, I've been involved in many plan updates, including some just in the very recent past that I will explain in a little bit. The thing about those original comprehensive plans, this was new. This was a lot of very few jurisdictions in the state actually had what we could call a comprehensive plan. Salem did. A few others did before this process all started. And so suddenly you had these jurisdictions that had the responsibility foisted upon them, many of them felt, to create these socialist communist documents, and believe me, I ran into a lot of resistance from in this planning process from people that were pushing very strong on the property rights issue and other issues of local control. But ultimately, we were able to get these 6 plans, and every plan in the state, all 241 incorporated communities plus 36 counties, to get them all acknowledged as compliant with the comprehensive plan. What I found in this original work, and if you go back and look at the comp plans in most jurisdictions now that haven't done major updates, is, as Brett pointed out, they're essentially in chapters that mirror the statewide planning goals. And I call it both in terms of this original comp plan development and then in the subsequent periodic review plans that we've been involved in. It's doing the planning work that we have to do, not doing the work that we want to do. And jurisdictions really kind of treated it that way, where they would just check the boxes. Yep, now we've got some policies on economic development. Now we have policies on transportation, and you can move on to the next topic. Brett did use a very important word he talked about vision, and that's something that I think was missing to a great degree in some of these early comprehensive plan projects where people were just laboring to get it done and over with. And now we're seeing more and more vision take a role in the comprehensive plan development, which I think is really, really important. Recently, I have worked with a number of jurisdictions, including both Nehalem and Wheeler, just south of you, in doing comprehensive plan updates. And what's been exciting about this particular work is that it focused a lot more on vision. I mean, I worked really closely with Nehalem early on in their effort. They were working on updating their development code. And basically, the Planning Commission got to the point of saying, we don't know how we want to write this code because we don't know what the people of the community see as the vision for the future of our community. So we put the whole development code on hold, went back and looked at the comp plan and looked at the goals and policies. As you will find in many, many jurisdictions of the state, especially the smaller ones, the original comprehensive plans that were developed in the mid to late 70s and even into the early 1980s have sat on the dusty shelf and not really played an important role in the community once they finally were acknowledged. Nehalem and Wheeler both had plans that most recently had been updated in the mid 80s. And what they found is that a lot of what was in the plan itself did not reflect the current realities of the community in 2 different ways. One, it did not reflect the technical aspects of the communities in terms of contemporaneous population projections, employment growth, didn't reflect the current economic structure in some jurisdictions. In Wheeler, especially, lost some industrial development, and a lot of jurisdictions had faced that, where the reduction in the timber economy in the 1980s ended up with comprehensive plans that essentially were irrelevant. They did not accurately reflect the economic realities of today because the mill closed 20 years ago, but the comprehensive plan still assumed that the mill was going to be operating, and those needed to be heavy updates. We did a major comp plan update for Sweet Home over the last 4 or 5 years, and that was very much the case there, where the whole economy had shifted away from a timber-based economy to one that was becoming a lot more tourist-focused and recreation-focused, and had to make changes. One of the things that I would recommend is, well, in this context, that comprehensive plans can be nuts and bolts documents, and they need to be, because they need to be based on current facts, current projections, the current realities of the local economy and the housing market and that kind of thing. But they also need to be heart and soul documents. And I think this is something that was missing for some time doing comprehensive plan updates, but recently I have seen jurisdictions really take to heart that this whole idea of vision creates an opportunity to engage the community very broadly in discussion, to sit down with the community and say, let's talk about, the intricacies of housing need production and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't ignite any kind of passion in the community. What does ignite passion is reflected in what I call the aspirations, which is, by my definition, I call aspirations as vision personified. And I use as an example the community of Monroe, a town of about 900 people that's between Corvallis and Eugene on Highway 99. Very much a bedroom type community to those two larger communities. But we ended up doing a whole set of aspirations, came up with 10 community aspirations that reflected the passions of the community and got tremendous community engagement in the development of these aspirations. I'm talking out of 900 people, probably easily 10% or more of the community actively participated in that. And it came up with things that people believed in. Also did this kind of work with Clackamas County, but it was the things the community really believed, they could really see, they could taste and feel this future. We aspire to be a community where people with families choose to live here because of our quality of life or whatever. Documents that said things like that, they're kind of, mom and apple pie, but they're a little more tangible than classic vision statements. And so I encourage you to really think about how do you use the planning process in your community to broadly engage the community, and you're not going to do it so much with the dry nuts and bolts of planning, but you're going to do it through this engagement that's really going to speak to people's desires and needs and the passions that they have, and to really open their eyes and open their hearts to actively participate and help to define what does Cape want to be. Now let me step back as I finish here. The city of Damascus. Damascus was incorporated. Well, actually, the history of Damascus was this. It's different than your history. Damascus is part of the Portland metropolitan area. It's at the far eastern edge of the Portland metro area. Here's a community that's existed since the late 1800s, named Damascus. Large rural area that had a number of residential density or low density subdivisions in it, had many active farms, lots of rural residential kind of housing, and had happily existed for a very long time the way it was. Metro controls the urban growth boundary for the Portland metropolitan area, and Metro decided to bring literally all of Damascus, about 11,000 acres, into the urban growth boundary all at once. This happened in 2002. So suddenly, Damascus had a responsibility, or the Damascus area, there was a responsibility to create a comprehensive plan and a development code for it. Of course, that fell to the county because Damascus was not an incorporated place. It fell to the county. Many people in the community didn't want the county doing this planning because they felt all they were doing was planning to make Damascus just kind of a fit the metro dream, and they didn't want to develop in that manner necessarily. So as a preventative move, they decided to vote and incorporate as the city of Damascus, which happened in 2004, kind of in the same way that you're looking at controlling your own destiny instead of letting the county manage all of these land use decisions for you. Damascus was very much in the same place. Had that same 4-year responsibility for developing a comprehensive plan and a development code. A lot of work went into it. I was involved in this from the very beginning. Did lots of roles for the community through this time. Consulting team working on trying to create a comprehensive plan. And it got back to the vision thing, where there was a very strong group of people in the community that were very pro progress, pro development, pro building out at urban densities and what it was going to look like. At the same time, there was very much a strong contingent of people in the community that were essentially anti-growth and preserving the land in the natural state that it had been in, and didn't want to see this rapid growth. It ended up, long story short, the community basically created 2 comprehensive plan drafts and took them both to the voters, as was required by a charter amendment that had been approved by the voters, where any comp plan or development code, the zoning ordinance, had to be approved by the voters, and literally took 2 documents to the voters, both of which failed. And the city was left for a long time without any kind of comprehensive plan or zoning ordinance. Continued to work on them, but continued to fail in front of the voters because of this strange provision which required voter approval. Ultimately, the community fell apart as a city and voted to disincorporate just about 10 years ago. and now is very happy in their current reality of low development pressure and moving along. The community has survived. The city as a government did not survive, but the community survived and probably came out stronger for it as a community. This vision piece is an important thing to remember, and it's what I would encourage you while you're going through the technical aspects of developing a comprehensive plan and a development code to also think very strongly about the heart and soul aspects and the opportunity that gives you to engage the people in the community in terms of thinking about what they want to have go into their comprehensive plan and working from that perspective rather than the technical perspective. With that, Becky, I'll turn it back over to you.
John, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. For the next roughly 20 minutes, we really wanted to give the Incorporation Steering Committee an opportunity to ask questions. And the folks that are also just observing, you will also have the opportunity to ask questions. You can either put those in the Q&A, but really if you just want to raise your hand, we'll go ahead and you can unmute and ask that question. So Bob, I'm going to start with you. And just, yeah, go ahead and unmute.
Thank you, Becky. I've got several questions. One of them is, were a new city to be formed and to initiate this process of developing the comprehensive plan, which I think you guesstimated might be 4 years, what happens in the interim? Is the city able to take any action on zoning ordinances, specifics of that type, while it's awaiting? So what happens when the new city's formed, but the comprehensive plan and all the related ordinances haven't been adopted yet?
I can take that from the experience in Damascus if you want, Becky, and then maybe the rest of our team may have things to add. It literally put a stop to development in Damascus because the city, the incorporated legal city, did not have a development code, so no development could take place because the 5 year that holding at the time was that the county development code did not apply, and so literally the city was without and went for many years with virtually no development activity happening because of this strange moratorium that it found itself in. I would think something like that might still apply, but I would look to the DLCD staff in terms of Kevin, you especially, if you have any current comments on that.
I'm looking to John. I think you came off mute and maybe you have some insight to share.
Well, I don't know. Or I mean, so I agree with John Morgan. That certainly could be a possibility. I suspect that there are other possible outcomes too. One might be that that the newly formed city reaches an agreement with the county and perhaps chooses or negotiates to implement the county's ordinance as it stands. Or I suppose the county could continue to do that if it's agreed upon. Now that's a little bit more dicey because, one jurisdiction implementing in another jurisdiction is always a little bit confusing. Another thing that I believe some jurisdictions did during the acknowledgement process, back in the day before their plans were acknowledged, was that they made decisions and applied the goals directly. That can be a little awkward, a little messy, but I guess the takeaway is that there's probably a couple different options, and we do all need to recognize that there needs to be something, even if it's a moratorium. Commissioner Thompson, looks like I had a question.
Well, the SHPO mandates, I wonder where they would stand in that. It seems to me that since that is the governor's and the legislature's priority, that might shed a different perspective on any moratorium.
Well, we'd need to definitely figure that out, Commissioner, right? That would be an item that would be, if I'm understanding the question right, it would be something that would be incumbent on any jurisdiction. So again, I think that would need to be folded into whatever agreement was reached in how to implement any development potential moving forward.
Thank you. And I know, Dale, you've got your hand up. Would you like to ask your question?
Good morning. Well, I was trying to scratch down some notes as the first presentation or first couple of presentations here was going on. I'll submit my questions to using the web form, but just you don't have to address everything now, but briefly where my mind was going is when you're talking about an urban growth boundary, does a city have to expand forever, assuming people want to keep moving there? I think we can all agree that Arch Cape is not going to be expanding to the west at all. And to the east, the Arch Cape proper that I'm familiar with is pretty much bounded by forest that's been newly acquired and belongs to the well, the people, but sort of the water district manages it. That and when we talk about low income or affordable housing, is there a price target? You know, is somebody going to say, well, we need $100,000 house, or does that mean a $200,000 house or 300,000? What, you know, kind of what are you talking about? Because I look at the value of my bare land and what my property taxes are. It's going to be really hard to build an affordable house on my lot. So I'd like to know what, you know, some hard numbers here. What does it really mean? Also hard numbers for something like a multi-family duplex apartment, something like that. Does the city have to have those? Is somebody going to say, well, Arch Cape has got to have land where we can build, you know, an apartment house with 30 units, or do we have to build 10 duplexes, or, you know, what do we have to do? And again, the land here is, you know, really expensive. Somebody with a lot on the west side of the highway is probably not going to want to develop something that would be considered even remotely affordable. They want to, you know, if they can sell $1 million house, that's what they want to build. They don't want to build an apartment, you know, or a duplex. It's gonna rent for a, you know, $1,000 a month or something like that. So I'd like to see, you know, some hard numbers. These are the thoughts that go through my head, and I'm going to guess that, you know, if we have citizens here that are engaged in what's going on, they may be asking the same question. So that's kind of where my head's going. Rather than saying, you know, these are goals to have affordable housing, it's like, give me hard numbers. What are people thinking about? That's my input.
Dale, thank you so much. Maybe we could start with the UGB question and then move on to the specific housing and affordable housing. And I'm not sure.
Probably me, Becky.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, happy to answer that, and thanks for the questions, Dale. So UGBs, does a city have to plan for growth forever? Well, in theory, but I mean, you know, when the land use program was founded, Oregon was growing at a very, very rapid rate, and cities continue to look at their UGB needs and expand UGBs as they need to. But I also want to give you some sense of proportion. So I did look at, I think the smallest incorporated city in Clatsop County is Cannon Beach, if I'm not mistaken. They have populations around 1,500. The population projection for Cannon Beach over the next 20 years is 120 people. Which may sound like a lot for Arch Cape, but over a 20-year span, that's not a huge rate of growth. I mean, certainly, you know, I look at cities all over the state, and you know, that's some growth. It's not huge. I'm not telling you that those are the numbers that Arch Cape would necessarily get, but you know, just in terms of relative numbers to expect. The other thing to be aware of too is our population trends are changing, and this is a state and national phenomenon where our birth rates are dropping, and so the rate of population growth is actually decreasing and is projected to continue decreasing. And that's the rate of growth. I'm not saying we're going to get to no growth. Maybe we will, but growth rates are slowing. So all of that informs the UGB question. So in terms of the housing needs, again, the ONA program establishes targets. It says, this is where we'd like this community to get to. And it does you know, it's going to be challenging for a lot of coastal communities because we know that real estate is very valuable. You know, when you're trying to address the housing needs of people in the 0 to 30% median income bracket, that's not going to be beachfront property. We understand that. But what the program will do is to ask every city to really think about meeting all of those needs, not just of the current residents, but of people who would like to live there, maybe people who work there but can't afford to live there. And those housing types are not going to be, by and large, single detached. You might need to look at some other types of housing. That may be multifamily, it may be middle housing, which is certainly, we've seen a big increase in what's known as middle housing statewide, which are, you know, really just looking at 2 and 3 units on a property, that kind of thing, duplexes, triplexes, and that sort of thing. So again, that planning exercise is to look at those targets and do meaningful planning to get there. We also understand that it is impossible to produce below market rate housing with the expectation that the market is going to produce that. And so subsidy is part of the equation. What will be available into the future, you know, is tough to predict, but this program is really trying to do a better job of accommodating everyone's housing needs statewide.
Thank you so much, Bob. Do you have a question?
Just as a follow-up to Kevin's comments, much appreciated, but Kevin, a target is not, and this is a question, a target is not a mandate that the city build and pay for a particular type of housing. It's a planning target that would set a goal for the city to achieve through the normal private land purchase development process. Is that right?
It's absolutely correct, Bob. Thank you for that clarifying question. You know, I mean, obviously, we want to see progress statewide, but they are targets and they're identified as targets for a reason. The market hasn't been producing this housing in the past. So we are looking at all kinds of tools that cities can use to facilitate housing development, but we also understand that by and large, cities are not in the business of building housing, and we're not expecting to change that paradigm.
Excellent. Do we have other questions? And I know we have a couple of attendees. If you're interested in asking a question, I think you can either raise your hand, and so go ahead and do that. Linda, why don't you go ahead?
The question I have has to do with whether we're actually would be starting from scratch. You know, can we reverse what we have with the county? You know, I'm thinking specifically about these housing amendments and the fact that our communities definitely resisted the idea of going from 7,500, you know, square foot minimum buildable lots to 5,000 square feet. Right now, the amendments haven't gone into effect, but assuming they did go into effect before we became a new city, can we then go back to 7,500 square feet without impunity, without perhaps people having some kind of compensation claim or something? Am my question making sense?
I think so. Yeah, go ahead. Is there someone from DLCD?
Let me start, maybe, Linda. So I think, first of all, you know, as the discussion was saying with, you know, with the dialogue between Bob and Kevin, there are going to be some circumstances where you're going to have to plan for for housing densities even more dense than 5,000 square feet lots for multifamily to be able to address the various housing needs through the ONA process. As to whether or not you can't, with some of your other zones, can you go back to 7,500? I mean, Kevin, what do you think? I mean, I don't know that we get to that level of specificity. I think kind of the biggest take is you're going to need to plan for some housing densities greater than a 5,000 square foot provision on some portion of the lands within the incorporated area based upon the population projections and looking at the planned future growth. Kevin, do you have more, or John, to add to that?
I think you're right. I understood Linda's question to be talking about that interim period after incorporation, but prior to establishment of, development code. And
no, I guess I'm asking, when we enact our new development
when
code,
you do,
can it be what we feel is what we want, assuming we're complying with state laws, of course?
So if the question is if you're not content with the arrangement that the county has established, can you come up with an arrangement that makes you content as a city? And I believe that if I got that right, I believe the answer is yes. But, I would also say that it needs to be based on, there needs to be an adequate factual basis. That's a goal 2 provision as well, right? So you can't just say, we just don't like this. You have to have a basis that supports your choices. And then I also just want to say that, having that, variety of housing types for different income levels, probably it's different, in this community than it does in Madras, Oregon, or Philomath, Oregon, or Lakeview, Oregon, right? It's going to be based on your characteristics and your income levels and your population. So I think that is, I guess I'll just tie that off and say that I don't think that you're bound to have to move forward what the county has done. I think you can do your own thing, but it has to be justified. There has to be an adequate factual basis.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
I'd just add, I mean, there are other housing types that could be considered. Cottage cluster housing is a model that a lot of cities are really embracing, that allows for very small units to be bought fee simple, which is great for folks who are trying to build equity but don't have the resources to buy, larger units. There's a lot of different models that might make more sense in your community. Does that include multifamily? It might. But I think if the work that you do as a community is mindful of where costs are likely to be and what housing models make them, are really feasible in this area, then I think you have some flexibility. I don't think just across the board that establishing a 7,500 square foot minimum lot size for any residential unit is likely to meet the affordability targets, just given the price of land in the community.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And I see we have Rick, unless Linda, if you had any other follow-up, but we could probably do the final question from Rick Smith.
Yeah, thanks, Becky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe one more question on this, Kevin, is how do these rules apply for areas that may have lots that could be developed, but the lot is dependent on space for a septic system? So, I mean, it's one thing to have, 5,000 square foot lots or even smaller, but if a septic system is required, we don't have sewers in one or more of these areas, you are limited with being unable to meet that requirement because you need part of the lot for a septic system.
Sure, I can speak real briefly to that. I mean, theoretically, the goal of the city is to provide for urban facilities over time. And I understand I think there's water and sewer districts in portions of Arch Cape, but maybe not everywhere. You know, one of the tasks of a city is to figure out, like, okay, over time, how are we going to get water and sewer service to all of the areas within our jurisdiction? In the interim, though, you're absolutely right that, you know, septic limitations are gonna absolutely factor into what development can or cannot occur on individual properties.
You know, I would just add, Kevin, we also don't have any storm sewers in Arch Cape at all, which is one reason that a big reason why our lots need to be bigger.
That's a really good point, Linda, and definitely the provision of infrastructure required for the development that's either there or envisioned in the future is definitely an important role for a city. With
Yeah.
that, we are at the top of the hour, and I just wanted to thank the presenters for taking the time today to provide additional information. And I know if anyone on the steering committee or the public generally has additional questions, you can definitely submit those either through the website or directly to myself or my colleague Scott. More than happy to pass those on as needed. But with that, we will conclude this webinar. I will encourage everyone to, the next kind of more public webinar that we have scheduled is what does it take to run a city? And so that is broader than just planning. It's looking at all the different kinds of services that cities provide. And we have speakers from the League of Oregon Cities and the city managers from both Manzanita as well as the city of La Pine. I'm just kind of getting a little bit more of that perspective of a relatively still younger city. So definitely looking forward to that. And with
Becky,
that,
is it okay if we post this recording on the community club website and the story map?
absolutely. We're planning on doing that, and the presentation that DLCD shared. We'll post both of those. It might take a day or two, but we'll post both online.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.